When I first pulled into the driveway of my new house, I felt like I had finally won the battle I'd been fighting for years. The moving truck was already parked out front, its back door rolled up, showing the boxes of my life stacked neatly inside. It had taken months of negotiations, endless paperwork, and sleepless nights worrying about interest rates, but I had finally done it. The house wasn't enormous, but it was mine. A 2-story brick home with a yard that didn't scream fixer-upper, but wasn't so polished it felt untouchable. The kind of house where I could build a life. The street itself looked like a postcard. White picket fences, tidy lawns, children's bikes leaning casually against garage doors. A cul-de-sac at the far end that made the neighborhood feel tucked away, almost secret. As I unloaded the first few boxes, I told myself that this was the beginning of peace. After years of noisy apartments, thin walls, and inconsiderate neighbors, I was ready to breathe. But peace wasn't what I had signed up for. Not with the HOA lurking in the background. I had heard stories about homeowners associations, of course. How they enforced rules about paint colors and lawn heights, about mailbox styles and garden gnomes. It sounded silly to me, but I figured it was just bureaucracy. Something you signed the papers for and then forgot about. What I didn't know, what no one had prepared me for, was that in my neighborhood the HOA wasn't run by a faceless board. It was ruled by one woman, and her name was Karen. I met her within the first week of moving in. It was early on a Saturday morning, and I was dragging my trash can to the curb, bleary-eyed and still adjusting to the routine. That's when I heard the sharp clack of heels on the pavement. I turned and saw her, perfectly pressed blouse, clipboard in hand, her eyes scanning my house like a hawk. She smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was the kind of smile you give someone when you've already judged them. "You must be the new homeowner," she said, her voice sweet in a way that felt manufactured. "I'm Karen, HOA president." She said it like it was a title of nobility. I nodded, extending a hand, but she didn't shake it. Instead, she flipped a page on her clipboard. "We have a very simple set of rules here. If you follow them, we'll get along just fine." I wanted to laugh, but I held it in. "Good to know," I said, trying to keep things light. Her eyes flicked to the trash can I was dragging. That can is supposed to be placed with the lid facing the street. "Not backward. We like uniformity." I stared at the can. "Oh, okay, I'll remember that." She jotted something down on her paper and gave me that smile again. "See that you do." And just like that, she clicked away down the street, clipboard swaying like a badge of authority. At first, I told myself it was nothing. Just a quirky neighbor. But then the trash can started showing up knocked over. The first time, I didn't think twice. It was windy that night, and I assumed a gust had toppled it. But when it happened again the following week, on a perfectly calm evening, I raised an eyebrow. The third week, I found the lid open, trash strewn across my driveway, and something inside me snapped. That's when I started paying closer attention. I began securing the lid with a brick. It wasn't heavy, but it was enough to keep raccoons or stray cats from prying it open. The next Thursday, I came home to find the brick neatly placed on the sidewalk and the can tipped over again. Neatly, like someone had taken the time to do it carefully. That's when I knew. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't wildlife. This was deliberate. I started asking around, casually bringing it up to neighbors. Most shrugged, said they hadn't seen anything. But one older man across the street leaned in and whispered, "If I were you, I'd stay out of Karen's way. She doesn't like being challenged." That confirmed it. Karen was behind this. The following week, I decided to test my theory. I placed my trash can out at dusk, then parked my car down the block where I could see my driveway. I turned off the lights, reclined the seat, and waited. For hours, nothing happened. Then just after 10 o'clock, I saw her. Karen, clipboard nowhere in sight this time, walked briskly up to my house. She glanced left, then right, making sure no one was around. Then with both hands, she shoved my trash can over. She didn't even hesitate. I gripped the steering wheel, torn between storming out right then and staying hidden, but something told me to wait. If I confronted her without proof, she'd deny everything, maybe even accuse me of harassment. The HOA board, filled with people too scared of her to object, would back her up. I needed evidence. The next morning, I tried being civil. I caught her on the sidewalk and said, "Hey, Karen, my trash can's been getting knocked over. Do you know anything about it?" Her face was the perfect mask of innocence. "Oh, probably raccoons," she said with that fake laugh people use when they're lying. "You should get a sturdier bin. The HOA can recommend an approved vendor." I stared at her, searching for any crack in her facade. But she was good, too good. She had been doing this kind of thing for years, I realized. She lived for it. That's when I decided I wasn't just going to catch her. I was going to outsmart her. It started with research. I spent evenings combing through forums, watching videos, even reading articles on creative pranks. I wasn't looking to hurt her, I wasn't that kind of person, but I wanted to give her a taste of her own medicine. Something that would make her think twice before messing with me again. And then I remembered the old air horn I had stashed in a box from a fishing trip years ago. Loud, obnoxious, impossible to ignore. The idea hit me like a lightning bolt. What if I rigged the trash can to fight back? I spent the next few days tinkering in my garage. I ordered a heavy-duty trash can, one that looked identical to the HOA-approved model but had thicker walls and a weighted base. I installed a spring mechanism in the lid, attached the air horn to a motion trigger and tested it until it worked perfectly. The second someone tried to tip it, the horn would blast. Not just a little beep, but a full-on shriek that could be heard halfway down the block. I couldn't stop grinning as I set it out by the curb the following Thursday night. My regular trash was hidden safely in a different bin out back. This one was a decoy. I angled my security camera just right and sat back, waiting for the show. At exactly 10 o'clock, just like before, I saw her, Karen. She strutted up the street with her usual self-importance, checked to make sure the coast was clear, and then approached my can. She gripped the handle, gave it a shove. The air horn erupted like a foghorn on steroids. Karen screamed, stumbling backward, clutching her chest as if she'd seen a ghost. The horn kept blaring until she kicked the can in frustration, which only set it off again. She shrieked a second time, tripped over the curb, and landed flat on her back. I nearly fell out of my chair laughing. But the best part wasn't just the sound, or the look on her face, or the way she scrambled to her feet and bolted like a thief caught red-handed. The best part was the footage. Crisp, clear video from my security camera, capturing every second of her humiliation, and I wasn't about to keep it to myself. The next morning, I couldn't wait to check the footage again. It was even better in the daylight than it had been in real time. The camera caught everything. Karen strutting up like she owned the street, giving my trash can the shove. The deafening air horn blasting her back, her panicked shriek. The wild flailing of her arms as she tripped over the curb and landed on the pavement. Then the kicker, her furious attempt to kick the can, setting off the horn again, making her leap back like she'd touched a hot stove. It was comedy gold, and I had it all in high definition. I brewed myself a strong cup of coffee, sat at the table and replayed the video over and over. Each time I caught some new detail. The way she scanned the street like a cat burglar. The exact moment her face twisted from smugness into sheer horror. The muttered string of curses as she staggered away into the shadows. For someone who had spent her life intimidating neighbors, it was poetic justice. But I didn't upload it right away. I knew I had to be careful. If I blasted it on social media, Karen would scream about defamation and privacy and rally the HOA to fine me into oblivion. No, I needed a smarter play, something that spread the truth without leaving me vulnerable. So I started small. I sent it privately to the neighborhood group chat, the one Karen wasn't in because she insisted on her own official HOA forum. My caption was simple. Mystery of the knocked-over trash can solved. At first, people thought it was a joke. Then the video loaded. Within minutes, my phone blew up with notifications. Laughing emojis, crying emojis. One neighbor typed, "I knew it was her." Another said, "She's been knocking mine over for years." A third added, "This is the best thing I've seen all week." By lunchtime, word had spread to every corner of the neighborhood. People were sharing it behind closed doors, whispering about it on front lawns, chuckling at barbecues. For the first time, Karen wasn't the predator. She was the punchline. But with someone like Karen, humiliation only made her more dangerous. Around 3 in the afternoon, there was a furious pounding on my front door. Not a polite knock, not a ring of the bell, full-on fists hammering wood. I opened it to find Karen, her face crimson, her hair slightly frazzled, clipboard clutched like a weapon. "You," she barked, jabbing a finger at my chest. "How dare you humiliate me? Do you know what you've done? That video is illegal. You had no right." I cut her off with a calm smile. "Karen, you trespassed on my property. My security camera recorded you committing vandalism. I didn't make you knock over my trash can. You did that all on your own." Her jaw clenched so tight I thought her teeth might shatter. I am the HOA president. You cannot just— Actually, I said, leaning casually against the doorframe, what I can do is send this video to the police. They'd love to see you trespassing at midnight, destroying property, or I can share it with the entire HOA board, maybe even the local news. Do you really want to go down that road? For the first time, Karen hesitated. Her bluster faltered, and I saw the flicker of doubt in her eyes. But she recovered quickly, straightening her blouse. You think you're clever, but this neighborhood runs on order, and I will not let you turn it into a circus. If you post that video anywhere else, I'll fine you into bankruptcy. I smirked. Good luck with that. And I closed the door in her face. That was the moment I knew I had her cornered. The following days were tense. Karen avoided my side of the street, but I could feel her eyes on me whenever I left the house. She was plotting, I knew it. And sure enough, the next week, a letter arrived in my mailbox. A formal notice from the HOA citing me for failure to comply with community waste disposal standards. I laughed out loud. She was trying to fine me for the trash can after she'd been caught messing with it. The irony was delicious, but I didn't ignore it. Instead, I drafted a polite but firm email to the entire board, attaching the video footage as evidence. My message was simple. This notice is retaliatory. The attached footage shows the HOA president herself vandalizing my trash can. Please advise whether the board intends to continue enforcing rules selectively or if equal standards apply to all homeowners. I hit send and sat back, waiting for the fallout. It didn't take long. That evening, I saw two of the board members, Mr. and Mrs. Langley, walking their dog. They stopped in front of my house, gave me a conspiratorial smile, and said, "We saw the video. About time someone stood up to her." Apparently, Karen's reign of terror had gone unchecked for years. She fined people for lawn decorations, for leaving Christmas lights up too long, for parking too close to the curb. Everyone hated her, but no one had dared to confront her. Now, with the footage circulating, she wasn't untouchable anymore. But Karen wasn't finished. Oh no, she doubled down. The next Thursday, I set my trash can out again. Not the rigged one this time, but my normal bin filled with actual garbage. I didn't expect her to try anything after being exposed. But sure enough, at exactly 10 o'clock, she showed up. Only this time, she was prepared. Through my camera, I saw her wearing gloves, a baseball cap pulled low like she thought a disguise would somehow absolve her. She marched right up, grabbed the can, and shoved it over. Trash spilled everywhere. Then she stomped away, muttering to herself. I almost couldn't believe it. After all the humiliation, all the whispers, all the laughter, she still couldn't help herself. It wasn't about trash cans anymore. It was about control. About proving she still had power. But what she didn't realize was that my camera had night vision. Her disguise was useless. The video showed everything. Her height, her gait, even the distinctive brooch pinned to her jacket. She might as well have worn a name tag. The next morning, I gathered my neighbors. Not publicly, just a few of us standing around pretending to chat by the mailboxes. I showed them the new footage. One by one, their faces shifted from disbelief to outrage. Mrs. Ramirez shook her head and said, "She fined me last year for my grandson's bike being on the lawn. And here she is knocking over trash like a hooligan." The group agreed it was time to act, but the question was how. I could feel the energy shifting. For years, Karen had ruled through intimidation and fines. Now people were whispering about recalling her position, about voting her out, about finally taking back control of the HOA. And I realized something important. This wasn't just about me and my trash can anymore. This was about everyone who had ever been bullied by her. Every family who had lived in fear of her clipboard. Every neighbor who had silently endured her tyranny. The air horn prank had started as personal revenge. But now it had ignited something bigger. The neighborhood was ready for a war, and I was more than willing to lead the charge. The first neighborhood meeting after the video incident was like stepping into an arena. Normally, only a handful of homeowners showed up to these things, half asleep and muttering about landscaping budgets or pool repairs. But this time, the room was packed. Every chair was filled. People lined the walls, even a few sat cross-legged on the floor. The buzz of whispers filled the air like static. Everyone was here for one reason: Karen. I took a seat near the back, trying not to look too smug. But the truth was, I could feel the shift in power already. For years, Karen had ruled this neighborhood like a tyrant, waving her clipboard like a sword. Tonight the kingdom was restless and the peasants had finally brought torches. Karen strutted into the room 10 minutes late, as though she were making a grand entrance. She wore her usual pressed blouse and pencil skirt, but I noticed her hands fidgeting with the clipboard. Her smile was tight, forced. She knew she was walking into a trap. "Good evening, neighbors," she chirped, her voice a little too bright. "Let's get started, shall we?" First item on the agenda, waste management standards. That was the spark. A ripple of laughter rolled through the room. People exchanged knowing looks. Karen's eyes flicked nervously across the crowd, but she pressed on. "As you all know," she continued, "we pride ourselves on maintaining the highest level of curb appeal. That means ensuring trash bins are placed correctly, lids secured, and cans stored promptly after collection. Unfortunately, we've had some violations." At that, a voice shouted from the back, "Yeah, from you!" The room erupted in chuckles and claps. Karen's face flushed crimson. "Excuse me," she snapped. "You heard him," another neighbor said. It was Mrs. Ramirez, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "We've all seen the video. You going around knocking over bins like some delinquent?" Karen slammed her clipboard on the table. "That video was taken out of context," she barked. "Really?" Mr. Langley chimed in, holding up his phone. "Because this looks pretty clear to me." He pressed play and the sound of the air horn filled the room, followed by Karen's unmistakable shriek. The entire crowd burst into laughter. Karen's face twisted. "That footage was illegally obtained," she shouted. I raised my hand calmly. "It was recorded by my security camera on my own property. Perfectly legal. And it shows you trespassing." All eyes turned to her. For the first time, she didn't have a comeback ready. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish. The room buzzed with murmurs. Someone whispered, "She's finished." Another said, "About time." Karen tried to recover, slamming the gavel down. "Order, order. This meeting is not about me. It's about keeping our community in line. If we don't enforce rules, this place will fall apart. Do you want messy lawns, broken fences, cars parked on the street like some slum?" But the fear in her voice betrayed her. She knew she was losing them. That night after the meeting, several neighbors gathered in my driveway. Mr. Langley, Mrs. Ramirez, a young couple named the Petersons, and a few others. The air was electric. "She's not fit to run this HOA anymore," Mrs. Ramirez said firmly. "We need to recall her," I nodded. "I've already looked into it. The bylaws say we can call for a vote if 1/3 of the homeowners sign a petition." "How many signatures is that?" the Petersons asked. 34, I said. "And judging by tonight, we won't have trouble getting them." The group agreed. It was time to act. The next 2 weeks were a blur of whispered conversations, quiet knocks on doors, and clandestine gatherings in backyards. We moved carefully, avoiding Karen's gaze, but the momentum was unstoppable. Neighbors who had once kept their heads down were suddenly emboldened. They told stories, endless stories of Karen's tyranny. She fined the Johnsons for leaving a basketball hoop in their driveway. She cited the Nguyens because their garden gnome was non-conforming. She berated a teenager for parking too close to the curb. One man confessed she had even trespassed into his backyard to measure the length of his grass with a ruler. By the end of the second week, we had 50 signatures. More than enough. We filed the petition with the board, and the recall vote was scheduled for the next monthly meeting. Word spread like wildfire. Karen, of course, caught wind of it. And she was furious. I noticed her skulking more often, patrolling the neighborhood like a hawk. She started writing citations for the smallest things. A hose left coiled on the lawn, a flower bed that wasn't edged, a car with a slightly dirty windshield. It was desperation, pure and simple. She was trying to remind everyone she still had power. But instead of intimidating people, it backfired. Neighbors laughed off the citations, posting them in the group chat like trophies. "Got fined for having a bird feeder." "Thanks, Karen." One message read, followed by a string of laughing emojis. Her control was crumbling, and she knew it. The night before the recall vote, I couldn't sleep. I paced my living room, sipping coffee long after midnight. This wasn't just about a trash can anymore. This was about justice. About standing up to a bully who had tormented this community for too long. But I also knew Karen wouldn't go down without a fight. The day of the vote, the room was even more packed than before. People were practically spilling out the doors. Karen sat at the front, her face pale but defiant. She clutched her clipboard like a shield, her knuckles white. "This is a witch hunt," she declared as the meeting began. A baseless attack on my character. I have dedicated years to protecting this neighborhood, and this is how you repay me? Her words fell flat. The crowd was unmoved. The board called for a vote. Hands went up one by one. For Karen to stay, against Karen to be removed. When the final tally was read, the room erupted. By a margin of nearly 3-1, Karen was out. She sat frozen, her eyes wide, her lips trembling. For once, there was no anger, no bluster, just shock. The gavel came down. The motion passes. Effective immediately, Karen is removed as HOA president. The room exploded into cheers. Neighbors hugged, high-fived, laughed in relief. It felt like a weight had been lifted off the entire street. Karen, meanwhile, stormed out, her heels clacking furiously against the floor. She didn't look back. That night, for the first time since I'd moved in, the neighborhood felt free. Kids played in the street without fear of being scolded. Music drifted from open windows. People gathered in driveways celebrating like it was the 4th of July. And me? I sat on my porch with a cold beer, watching it all with a satisfied smile. My trash can stood proudly at the curb untouched, but deep down I knew it wasn't over. People like Karen don't just disappear. They scheme, they plot. They wait for revenge. And judging by the fire I saw in her eyes as she stormed out of that meeting, she wasn't finished with me. Not by a long shot. For a week after the recall vote, it felt like the neighborhood had taken a long, deep breath for the first time in years. Kids drew chalk lines on sidewalks without fear of fines. Neighbors left their lawn chairs out overnight. Someone even parked a bright orange RV in their driveway just to prove a point. People smiled at each other more, lingered in conversations instead of retreating behind closed doors. But I didn't let myself relax. Because I knew Karen, and Karen wasn't the kind of person to slink away quietly. At first, her absence was almost eerie. I didn't see her on her usual morning patrols, clipboard in hand. She didn't show up to glare at kids playing basketball in the cul-de-sac. Her blinds stayed drawn. Her once immaculate lawn started showing signs of neglect. On the surface, it looked like she was defeated, but I'd seen the fire in her eyes when she stormed out of the recall meeting. That wasn't the look of someone giving up. That was the look of someone plotting. Sure enough, the first shot came 2 weeks later. It was a Thursday morning, and I had just wheeled my trash can out to the curb. I was halfway down the driveway when I noticed something odd. A folded piece of paper taped to the lid. I frowned, peeled it off, and unfolded it. It wasn't a citation. It was a note. You may have won the battle, but the war isn't over. Okay, my stomach tightened. Later that day, I noticed Karen's car parked across from my house. She sat inside, sunglasses on, pretending to scroll through her phone. She wasn't fooling anyone. She was watching me. The harassment escalated from there. My mailbox was mysteriously dented one morning. A dead patch of grass appeared in my front lawn, like someone had poured something toxic there. One night I heard footsteps outside my window, but by the time I got outside, the street was empty. I knew it was her. But without proof, I couldn't go to the police. And Karen was too cunning to get caught the same way twice. So I decided to turn the tables again. I upgraded my security system. Motion-activated cameras, night vision, cloud backups. I even installed a smart floodlight that triggered when someone came too close. If Karen wanted to play games, I'd make sure the spotlight was literally on her. Sure enough, the following Thursday night, the cameras caught her. She crept onto my lawn just after midnight. Hood pulled up, gloves on. She bent over my trash can, clearly intending to tip it again. But the moment she touched it, the floodlight blasted on, brighter than a spotlight on a Broadway stage. Karen froze, caught like a deer. The cameras captured everything. Her wide eyes, her pale face, her hand still gripping the trash can. Then came the cherry on top. My system was rigged to play a recorded message when the light triggered. Smile, Karen. You're on camera. The recording echoed down the street. She shrieked, stumbling backward, then sprinted away as fast as her heels would carry her. The next morning, I posted the footage in the neighborhood group chat. Not angrily, just calmly captioned, "Another late-night visitor. Glad my cameras work." By now, Karen's reputation was beyond repair. Neighbors who had once feared her now laughed openly at her antics. One even joked about making a blooper reel of Karen vs. trash can. But for Karen, humiliation wasn't enough. She wanted revenge. A week later, I came home from work to find a letter stuffed in my door. No envelope, just a folded piece of notebook paper. The handwriting was jagged, angry. "This neighborhood is mine. You ruined everything." I'll make sure you regret it. That was the last straw. I marched down to the police station, armed with every piece of evidence I had. The videos of her knocking over my trash can, the footage of her sneaking onto my lawn, the threatening notes. The officer listened patiently, brows furrowing deeper with every clip I showed him. "You've got more than enough here," he said finally. "This isn't just harassment, it's stalking, trespassing, and vandalism. We'll handle it," and handle it they did. The very next night, the police set up a quiet watch on my street. Sure enough, at 11:45 p.m., Karen emerged from her house dressed in black like some wannabe ninja. She crept toward my trash can, a jug of something in her hand. Later, I'd find out it was bleach, probably to kill more grass. The officers moved in before she even touched it. The moment their flashlights lit her up, Karen screamed, dropping the jug and bolting. But she didn't get far. 2 officers intercepted her at the curb, and within seconds she was in handcuffs, shrieking about conspiracies and how this was her neighborhood. I watched from my porch, arms crossed, as they led her away. For the first time since I'd moved in, I felt safe. The fallout was swift and brutal. Word spread like wildfire. Karen arrested for trespassing and harassment. The new HOA board released a statement officially banning her from any leadership role. Neighbors who had once tiptoed around her now spoke openly, shaking their heads, laughing about the downfall of the self-appointed queen of the cul-de-sac. And me, I finally got what I had wanted all along: peace. Weeks passed. The grass grew back where she'd tried to poison it. My mailbox was repaired. The trash can stood tall and unbothered at the curb every Thursday. Neighbors stopped me on walks, thanking me for standing up to her. Some even invited me to barbecues, their way of saying, "You're one of us now." One evening, I sat on my porch, a cold beer in hand, watching kids ride bikes down the street. The air was calm, filled with laughter and the smell of someone grilling burgers. My trash can sat proudly at the curb, its lid shut, its body upright, undisturbed. I raised my bottle in a silent toast to it. To the can that started it all. Because sometimes, the smallest battles, the ones over trash cans, of all things, are the ones that topple tyrants. And as the sun set on my peaceful neighborhood, I couldn't help but smile. Karen was gone, and my trash can had finally won.